Some of the most exhausting things you do all day, you do inside a single sentence. Let's look at one of them. You said no to something. One word would have done it. No, maybe I can't. And instead, you gave 3 reasons and an apology and a little backstory that nobody asked for. The context, the caveat, the reassurance that you're not a bad person for saying it. And somewhere in the middle of all that, you felt it. The exact moment it became too much. And you kept going anyway, because stopping felt somehow more dangerous than continuing. Later you replay it and cringe. Why did I say all that? Why can't I just answer a question? It's not that you didn't know the answer. It's that the answer, on its own, felt unsafe to hand over. The usual story is that you talk too much, that you're a bit much, a bit anxious, that you should just be more concise. And lately there's a second story going around that this is a fawn response, a trauma thing wired into you in childhood. Hold both of those loosely for a minute, because the first one is unkind and the second one, as we'll get to, is a lot less proven than it sounds. Here's what most people are never told about this. You're not over-explaining because something's wrong with you. You're doing it to close a gap before it can open. So, by the end of this, you'll understand what the extra sentences are actually for, why your mind reaches for them before you can stop it, and one small thing you're allowed to do instead. Not a fix, just a different place to set the weight down. Here's what's actually happening. When you hand someone a plain answer, no, I can't, I'd rather not, there's a tiny gap between what you said and what they might think about it. And in that gap lives every version of you being misread. Selfish, cold, difficult, ungrateful. You can't see what they're actually thinking, so your mind fills the gap for them with the worst reading and then rushes to correct it before they can land on it. Every extra sentence is you doing their understanding for them, getting there first. And here's the first. Oh, that's why. You're not rambling. You're trying to be understood before you can be misunderstood. That's not a flaw in your character. That's a very old, very reasonable wish, doing far too much work in a sentence about lunch. And there's real research underneath this, the solid kind. Psychologists have a name for the engine, fear of negative evaluation. It's one of the most well-established findings in the study of social anxiety, the distress of anticipating that you'll be judged, criticized, found wanting. And paired with it, something researchers call hypermentalizing, a clunky word for overreading other people's minds, attributing more thought, more judgment, more scrutiny to them than is actually there. Put those two together and you have the whole machine. You overpredict the verdict and then you defend against it, out loud in real time with more words. And the quiet, slightly funny tragedy of it. Most of the time, the person across from you wasn't judging you at all. You built the courtroom, you wrote the prosecution, and then you exhausted yourself answering charges nobody filed. Sit with that, because it's most of the thing. Now, about that second story, the one where this is a fawn response, a piece of childhood trauma you're stuck replaying. I want to be honest with you here, because it matters. The fawn idea is a clinical model one therapist named a couple of decades ago. A lot of people find it useful, and it might resonate for you. But it is not in the diagnostic manuals, it isn't built on large studies, and it is nowhere near as settled as the internet makes it sound. And here's why that's good news, not bad. You do not need a wound to explain why you over-explain. You don't need a diagnosis or a hard childhood or a broken part to point at. Wanting to be understood is not a symptom. It's one of the most human things there is. Some of you did learn this in hard places, and that's real, and it's yours. But you are allowed to understand this about yourself without first deciding you're damaged. So what do you do with it? Not a script, not be more concise, which is just a kinder way of telling you you're too much. Here's the one small thing worth holding on to. The next time you feel the extra sentences coming, the reasons, the apology, the backstory, notice the gap they're rushing to fill, and then, just once, let the gap stay open a second longer than is comfortable. Say the short thing. No, I'd rather not. Thank you, but no. And then don't rescue it. Don't fill the silence with proof. I know how that lands, by the way. For a lot of you, the idea of just saying no and stopping feels almost physically impossible, like leaving the house without checking the door. If that's you, you're not being dramatic. You're feeling the size of the gap. Let it be there anyway. Once. Because the truth underneath all of this is gentler than the fawn story. You are allowed to be understood slowly. You don't have to hand someone the whole file to be a good person. The short answer was always enough. It was only ever you who needed the extra pages. Two small things before we land this. If this put words to something you do in every conversation and then cringe about later, a like is just how the next over-explainer, mid-cringe, finds it too. And subscribing means the next one of these finds its way back to you. And if you caught yourself just now wanting to explain your over-explaining to me in the comments, that's the whole video, and you're very welcome here. And if this was you, if you want to go a little deeper, I made a little guide for the over-explainers. It answers the 5 questions you might be too afraid to ask out loud. Gently, and it's yours, free, linked right below. It's also how you find your way into love notes, little letters for people who feel this kind of thing softly. I'd love to have you there. You were never too much. You were just trying very hard to be understood. You're allowed to stop working so hard for it. I'll see you next time.